everybody. It's Rebecca Mendoza, and this month on my Business Spotlight, I am talking with Linette Nardi, who's an attorney with Northern Legacy Law. Welcome, Linette. How are you?
Good, doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to just kind of, talking a little bit about what Northern Legacy does and how we can help.
Yeah, this is perfect because there's so many different specialties, I guess you would call it that attorneys do. But what's really important to me about what you do is you help a lot of families and clients that are in my families and clients position around trust and estate planning and things like that. So I want to get right into it and talk about what you specialize in. So like what do you do, or what does Northern Legacy Law do, and how do you support families in like protecting what matters most?
Sure. So specifically, really my practice areas, the practice areas in my firm are primarily estate planning, and estate planning is an umbrella term that encompasses a whole lot. So estate planning includes creation of wills and trusts.
Hmm.
It also includes trust administration, which is the process of actually carrying out, someone's wishes in their documents. And then it also includes a lot of probate work. So for any of my clients who maybe didn't get the chance to set up documents during their lifetime, potentially their estate will go to probate court.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's another kind of subfield. And then within that, there are all these other little subfields, including conservatorship, right? So
Hmm.
conservatorship is, I like to think of it as the process of probating a person's life.
Mm.
So it goes through probate court just like an estate does. And so, it's for folks who maybe didn't sign a power of attorney or an advanced healthcare directive. Someone needs to be officially appointed to make medical and financial decisions for them. So
Right. And that's one of the most important things I believe that I've been running across is like the preparation. So if people are prepared with a trust or a will, and I want to talk about those things, they might end up going to probate, and then it's a longer process. It can tend to be expensive, and people don't have to go that they don't have to get there if they do the proper preparations beforehand, right?
that's right. That's right. So usually, what I do is I kind of focus on in my consultations and I try and make my consultations a little mini seminar.
Mm,
Um, so, what I usually go over in my seminar is, three reasons why we want to avoid probate court. And the first one is probate court is very costly. So usually what the court will do is they will actually calculate the fair market value of all assets going through court, including your home. And so I think what's notable about that is for a home that has a mortgage on it, they will still use the fair market value and not the equity value. So they don't factor in if there's a mortgage balance into the fees. And so usually it's between 4 to 6% of the total fair market value. So if you take a home, I think the average fair market value of a home in California is around 750,000 these days. If you factor in, let's say, 10% of that is 75,000. So half of that, you're looking at roughly, 32,500 if you look at just 5%. And that's just for the home. So number one, it's costly. Number two, it's very time consuming. I think, I've primarily worked in LA County and Ventura counties, somewhat in Orange County. LA County is huge, right? A lot of people in it. And so it usually takes between, maybe 3 to 4 years for an estate probate case to fully wrap up in court. And that's because the court's docket is just so busy.
yeah.
And
Oh.
then the last reason is probate court is very public. So by
Mm,
public, I mean we are required to send legal notices to any known creditors of the estate. So any final bills that the executor finds. And we need to also send notices to the Department of Healthcare Services. And this is really important for folks who received any kind of government benefits. Let's say they were on Medi-Cal, right?
yeah.
Um, they actually, just by virtue of going through probate court, the government may actually try and get repayment back for the benefits that that person received. Um, so one of the benefits is if you set up a trust, right, where it bypasses the probate process, you can save your heirs a lot of, a lot of funds, just, not having to basically invite creditors into your estate.
Right. Well, and I mean, one of my main questions that I wanted you to answer today was is like what happens in California if you don't prepare an estate plan, and especially as somebody who helps people buy homes, one of the things I advise them of is, once they close escrow, you should go immediately and talk to somebody like yourself in order to get that prepared because you just shared the what happens if you don't. So, in that, what you were saying, can you explain the difference between a will and a trust? I think that people sometimes mix those things up, or they're not exactly sure what those two things are. And how do you know, like, which one that you need?
That's really the big ticket question. So a will and a trust are different in that, with a will, like a trust, you get to choose who your assets go to.
Hmm.
However, a will necessarily is administered in court. It can't be administered outside of court. So really the only difference is the biggest difference is a trust completely avoids the court process, the court timeline. And so what I emphasize to my clients who meet with me is with a trust, we avoid that multi-year process. I can actually administer simpler trust in a matter of months, right? And for the most part, it's definitely less than a year. It's usually a couple months.
Hmm.
So there are a couple of things that put people in the category where a will is not sufficient to avoid court and they're really best suited with a trust. The biggest factors I have found is if they own real estate, any kind of real estate in California puts you in the category where you need a trust.
Hmm.
Um, Also, if you have minor children, and I think really minor children come in because most companies, especially life insurance companies, will not pay out to minors. And so, if you want to make sure that your minor children have access to your funds for their care, especially the guardian that you nominate to take care of them, right, their legal guardian, will probably need some amount of financial support. So, those assets actually get frozen if you only have a will because companies will pay out to, well, they will not pay out to minors. So
Right.
the way that we avoid this is we set up trusts for clients with minor children and we list the trust as the beneficiary, not the child,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and then the third reason would be, generally, even if you don't own real estate, but you have assets that are over, um, it's called the small estate affidavit threshold.
Hmm.
I believe it's currently $186,000. To 186, 250,000 is the exact number. So if you add all of your accounts together, so life insurance, bank accounts, retirement accounts, and the numbers above that, you still most likely need a trust.
Right. So, I want to do a lot more videos within you in the future because this is, and I know, probably get some people to, like you shared a seminar or things where you can go into detail because there's so much. And it's so important. It really is probably one of the most important things that you could do for yourself and your family. Well, mainly for your families, right? But real quick, from people who are like just starting from scratch, or don't have a plan, or maybe want to update an existing plan, what's your process look like? Like how do you guide clients? Like what do you do?
So for my estate planning process, I actually have a neat kind of visual resource that I share with my clients before my consultations, just because I find the visual is really helpful. I call it my roadmap.
Hmm.
And so if you look at my roadmap, it really goes through usually it's a 6 to 8 week process from start to finish. And it's built in a way that there are meetings that are intentionally somewhat spread out, usually a week or two apart. And really the point of that is I want to make sure that my client is not pressured to have all the answers at that first meeting.
Hmm.
A lot of this is kind of like spring cleaning where we've got to do some research on, where accounts are held, what the death benefit amounts are, if there are beneficiaries already on accounts. And so, usually I'll get the initial phone call or email. Oftentimes it's a referral from a colleague.
Hmm.
And from there, I schedule a consultation. And really, that's where I try and get a sense of what the client's primary goal is,
Hmm.
um, who they care about, who's important in their life, and they want to make sure is taken care of if anything happens to them. Um, and oftentimes it's not always cut and dry. So if there are children, obviously children are typically beneficiaries, but a lot of people these days are taking care of aging parents. And
Yep.
so there could be a certain amount set aside for them, whether it's life insurance or a special account that's going directly for the care of their parent. So after the consultation, I usually schedule what's called a pre-signing meeting, and the pre-signing meeting is just that. It's right before the meeting. It's kind of a final checkpoint where the client gets to say, I'd like to change my mind on this, or actually, I discovered I have this account that we need to include. And so we really finalize the rough draft that we build at the consult. And what I do from there is I prepare drafts. So I think it's important to show clients drafts of what they're signing, just
Hmm.
kind of give them a chance to ask any questions, make sure they feel comfortable, they know what they're signing. And so the signing itself, actually, post-pandemic has changed in that we now have this neat way of notarizing documents that's online. You may have used it in your real estate work, and
Hmm.
it's called remote online notarization. So I would say 90 to 95% of my clients are opting for that remote online notary process because they can actually sign from home and they don't need to
Yeah.
travel to an office.
So
Um,
convenient.
so convenient. And
No
so,
excuses.
exactly. And so it's neat because, I think especially I work with a lot of clients who have young children.
Hmm.
It's difficult. I have a toddler. It's really hard to lug a toddler to a law office.
Yeah.
So they get to sign, after their work hours.
Yeah, that's great.
Um, so, I still maintain in-person offices for my clients who do want to sign paper documents. That's no problem. I have an office here in Southern California in Valencia, and then I have another one in Northern California in Fairfield. Um,
So you work all of California. Well, do you work outside of California or is it mainly California?
Yeah, I typically work in California for California-based trusts. So if my clients are residents of California, they need a California trust
Right.
or probate or any kind of other legal service. Because I'm licensed only in California.
Hmm.
Um, I do work with other out-of-state attorneys. So recently, I actually got a phone call from a colleague who's an estate planning attorney in Texas. And his Texas client, who he's setting up a trust for there, has property here in Southern California. And so he reached out to me to help prepare a deed to fund their property into their Texas trust. So I do get a lot of that kind of work as well.
Got it. Yeah, I didn't even think that that was a consideration. I have people who will move out of state sometimes. They'll be moving from here, going to another state, and so I refer other agents because I have a network all across the country, and so I can see how it's really valuable for you to have relationships with with other lawyers or attorneys around the country. For those purposes, people have second homes, other properties, families in different places, so that's really good to know.
It's so important. I think, really these are networks and relationships that you build when you go to local conferences. And I
Hmm.
think really, in my opinion, there are two goals of going to a conference. One is obviously to make sure you're keeping current with changes in the law, which
Right.
I feel very strongly about. And then two, you want to make sure you have a great network because, like you said, a lot of my clients have investment properties in other states or potentially family members in other states. So I would say have really great referrals for, the West Coast. It's primarily West Coast.
Mhm.
Um, but, I know that we were kind of initially talking about the overall process. So just to kind of get back to that, the signing, right? Whether it's online or in my office, I always follow up my signing with what I call the delivery meeting. And the delivery meeting, it can, if it's in person, that's where I would deliver kind of the physical trust binder with the completed signed documents.
Mhm.
Or if it's online, a lot of my clients kind of go through the process completely virtually. What I do is I actually mail the binders with signature required, so that it gets to the client safely. So they will always have their binder in hand by that last meeting. So they get the chance to kind of flip through it, make sure they know where to find everything. And so the last meeting is to tie up the loose ends. And really, another thing that I really emphasize at my law firm is making sure a trust is properly funded, right? So we have the really famous case of Michael Jackson, actually. Michael Jackson had, I'm sure, a fabulous legal team.
Mm.
Um, and, he set up a trust. However, it wasn't funded. So the way you can think of a trust is it's really a container, and
Mhm.
that container is empty until the assets are retitled. The ownership is retitled to the
Mhm.
trust. So you probably know the way that looks with a home is the deed needs to be updated so that the trust is the owner of record on the deed. And that process needs to happen with every other financial account. So what I do at that final meeting is I give very kind of detailed instructions on how my clients can move their accounts into the trust. Only the owner can do that. Otherwise, I would help with that. But
Yeah.
I do the next best thing, which is give them, verbal and written instructions. And I do actually retitle the ownership of their home via deed because it's very technical. You can imagine to prepare deeds. So I handle that part of the funding
For
for
them.
my clients.
Awesome. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you and get started, what's the best way to connect?
The best way, I always give the three options. I have my phone number. They can just kind of call and speak with either myself or my legal assistant to set up a consultation.
Mhm.
They can also reach out by email. So we have our email on my website. And I also have a website with an online scheduler. And I think the online scheduler is probably the most convenient. It has, my entire calendar. They can directly choose the time that works for them.
Right. No going back and forth. You pick a time and you get that time.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. Like I said, I know that we'll probably do some more videos because we have a lot of different things that I know you can give people insights on before they even meet with you and get a little bit of background. So I appreciate everything that you do for us and what you've brought in. So I can't wait to do this next time. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right.
Okay.
Talk
Thank
to you
you.
later. Bye.
Bye.